Hi, this is Arthur Robinson Jr. I am the creator of PowerfulInterviews.com and am the creator of AudioSecretsTrainingEvent.com. I want to welcome each and every one of you to this phenomenal video. In this interview, you're going to experience life-changing information that you will not find anywhere else. I have secured an incredible interview with a great friend of mine, international speaker, best-selling author, the multi-millionaire. His name is Fab Poy. Fab Poy is a managing partner at his phenomenal company, which is called Tyrus Wings. Tyrus Wings, they basically sell private jets. So in this interview, you're going to hear exclusively how Fab Poy builds massive wealth by selling private jets. Also in this interview, Fab Poy, he breaks down layman's terms about him and his other managing partners at his phenomenal company. They did what is called a collaboration economy. Also in this interview, Fab Poy, he breaks down layman's terms about his first experience when he sold his first private jet. He sold that private jet when he was only 23 years old, and he experienced a hefty commission. That is huge. So right about now, go get your pen and your pad, sit back and relax, and write down some notes. In this interview that I'm going to reveal to each and every one of you with my great friend, international speaker, best-selling author, the multi-millionaire, Fab Poy. This interview is going to change your life. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I love what the multi-billionaire Elon Musk says. He is worth over $11 billion. Elon Musk says, never give up. Are you hearing me right now? So if you want to start a business and you want to take your business to the next level, don't wait for things to happen. Successful entrepreneurs that are decamillionaires and hectamillionaires and multi-billionaires, they don't wait for things to happen. They are actually making things happen. So check it out.
I'd like to welcome the one, the only, the powerful Fab Poy to the show.
Hi, Arthur. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
I'd like to thank you, Fab, for taking time out of your busy schedule to educate me and the listeners worldwide about building wealth and about your phenomenal book, Attitude Determines Your Altitude. I gladly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So everyone that's listening, I highly recommend go and get your pen and your pad right now. My great friend Fab Poy is going to break down layman's terms on how you can build wealth with private jets. Is that correct, Poy?
Yep, that's correct. Yep, this is an interesting business that I'm in. But yeah, fire away. What would you like me to tell you?
Now, what I'd like to know, and can you explain to the listeners in layman's terms, who is the powerful Fab Poy? How long you been in your powerful industry, and what is your expertise?
Yeah, well, I grew up as a kid wanting to fly. I was a great lover and still am of science fiction. And so when I was growing up, I had this idea I would become an astronaut and I would travel the galaxy a bit like Captain James T. Kirk from Star Trek. So I didn't quite know how to go about it. So my science teacher told me to write to NASA. So I did, and they responded within 3 weeks. And they said to me, well, if you want to be an astronaut, you either have to become a pilot or a scientist. So I didn't quite really think I would fit in a laboratory all day, sitting there with test tubes and things like that. So that didn't really float my boat. But I kind of thought that the idea of flying around in airplanes was pretty cool. So I applied myself in school and knew I needed to improve in maths and a few other subjects in order to make the grade. 17 years old, I started flying. I got my pilot's license before my driver's license.
Wow.
I then tried to join the Royal Air Force here in England, but they wouldn't take me. They said I wasn't good enough. And that kind of really did hit me in the teeth big time, because I was really banking on getting in the Air Force and spending some time there before then joining the astronaut corps. But while all this was happening, I got to meet some astronauts and find out that what they were actually doing in space was not actually what I wanted to do in space. And unfortunately, the technology wasn't really there. I mean, I was born in 1969, which is when the first man landed on the moon, and I really did think that by the age of 40 we would have been going to Mars and beyond. But no, we haven't even been back to the moon. Now, the question is, did we ever go? Or if we did go, why haven't we been back? And there's all those questions out there that often I ask myself. But what happened with me is, you see, I had reasons why I wanted to go into space, and the reasons were to go out there and visit other planets. Well, when I saw that the technology wasn't there, and basically astronauts today spend time in this aluminium tube called the International Space Station, orbiting Earth for maybe about a year, and then they come back down to Earth and they've got a lot of physical problems for quite a while after their mission, that wasn't my idea of fun. So I then got into flying as a civilian pilot. I got all my licenses, started flying private jets. I then started doing some business as well. I got involved in network marketing, selling weight loss products, built a very successful organization. I was making $10,000 a month in my early 20s. And this was back a while ago, bearing in mind I'm 47 now. So I had fun doing that. I got all my licenses, did a bit of aircraft sales. I then ended up being marketing manager for a private jet terminal in northern Italy, where I was at the time. And growing up, I was very fortunate because my father was a good role model for me. He worked for Vidal Sassoon, the famous British hairstylist, and he was one of his top executives. And so we got to travel a lot. We lived in New York for a couple of years and then back to London. Then my father opened the business for Vidal over in Italy. And then after a while, my father left the business and set up his own. And so we stayed in Italy for a while, where I did most of my education, which was done at the international school, which was a great opportunity for me because I was in class with kids from many different countries. So I remember my best friend was Japanese and the other best friend was from Israel. And so they were obviously different religions to mine. They spoke different languages, but we all came together and we had our own rock band and stamp club and other things. And it was great growing up with these kids from all over the world because it taught me how important it is to have an open mind and that the world is a great place to explore, a bit like the universe and other planets. And so anyway, I started my career as a pilot in the private jet industry, flying private jets, flying some of the wealthiest people around the world. And then I got into flying for some airlines and did that for a while, did a stint in the Middle East for 2.5 years. And then while I was in the Middle East, I was doing a lot of night flying. And in order to stay awake, I would read. And it was reading a book which was very interesting because it's book's written by Seth Godin. And in this book called Linchpin, he talks about these linchpins and how the professions of the future were the professions where somebody could become unique. And he mentions some of the professions which up until a few years ago paid very well, but were going to be out of fashion. And one of those professions was the airline pilot. And he said, because the airline pilot is easily replaceable. So it made me think. And I thought, well, effectively, all the airlines that I've worked for in the past, when I left, they replaced me very easily. I'm just a wheel in the cog. I'm not a linchpin. So it got me thinking, what can I do to become a linchpin? And that was one book that influenced me. And then the other book that influenced me was Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where he talks about if you want to make money and have a nice lifestyle, you should develop a business and then from the business become an investor where money starts working for you. Right. And it soon made me realize that if I continued flying, what could I do? I could join another airline, fly a bigger airplane, become a chief pilot, but how much more money was I going to be earning? And so from there, I then, talking to my wife about what should we do next, I decided that in the past I'd sold aircraft and I did it successfully. I sold my first jet at 23 years old and made a bit of a commission on that, which was good. And so I said, well, I'm in my 40s now and I've got a lot more experience, lived in more countries, worked with more people from different countries and stuff like that. Let's combine my passion for business and my passion for airplanes together and set up an aircraft sales business.
Wow.
And so I created Tyrus Wings. I met my business partner, interestingly enough, online through LinkedIn. We got talking, and Jeff was just leaving the events business, which he'd been in for 30 years, and he'd always flown as a pilot for a hobby for 25 years. And he wanted to do something with aviation. So he started to do something in the aircraft sales thing, but wasn't having much success. Neither was I. So we decided to combine forces and create Tyrus Wings together. and start the business, because Jeff's got some expertise I don't have. He's very good with legal and contracts and things like that, because he's done these contracts for his own company for many years, and he's done events with very famous people from Oprah Winfrey to Tony Robbins and many others. And so he had that experience to bring to the table. And I had my aviation expertise and having been in business aviation, commercial aviation, and knowing that side of things. And so we combined forces, and we've been doing business now for 4 years. Business is doing very well. We're now this year, as well as aircraft sales, we've now branched into aircraft management. So we have the opportunity, when we sell a private jet to a corporation or a high net worth individual, we can then manage that aircraft for them, which means we look after the maintenance, we hire the pilots, we manage the pilots and the airplane for them. Because all they need to do is let us know when they want to fly, and we'll make sure the airplane's there and then send them an invoice at the end of the month.
So you and your partner, y'all actually did a collaboration economy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we combine together. A lot of our days, we use Skype video a lot. So Jeff's based at Spruce Creek Airport, which is near Daytona Beach. It's a special fly-in. There's a runway and 450 villas. Each villa has a hangar. So Jeff works out of his hangar over at Spruce Creek. I'm here in Manchester in England, and we connect via Skype video, and it's like being in the same office, but, we've got the Atlantic Ocean that divides us. But through technology, we communicate with each other, and we do business, and we communicate with people all over the world. Today with social media and technology, it's just fantastic. You can really set up a business with nothing. A lot of people, in the beginning, they thought that we had venture capitalists behind us.
Right.
One of the first deals we did, we ended up in the first 18 months of being in business selling a Boeing 777 to one of the richest people in the world. That aircraft is now undergoing conversion to a VVIP aircraft. So when this happened and people in the industry found out, they thought, who are these guys from Tyrus Wings? Wow, they must have a lot of venture capital money behind them to do what they're doing. In reality, we didn't. It was just me and Jeff. Our computers and our smartphones and technology. And I was fortunate enough to learn throughout the years. I did a lot of reading and studying and I'm trying to understand and get my head around social media and trying to understand how you can use social media to build your business. Well, we're using social media to sell private jets. We're selling 50 million more items through social media. That doesn't mean we have a website where you click on, put a Global Express private jet in your shopping cart and pay with PayPal. No, but what I'm saying is that you can use it on LinkedIn and YouTube and other social media platforms to get the word out there. And guess what? It doesn't cost any money. It takes a bit of brains, a bit of creativity, and off you go.
Wow. This is an incredible interview, and I appreciate you coming on my show today, Fab.
Thank you.
Fab, when you were flying those private jets, were you flying hectamillionaires and billionaires around the world? And what was your role when you were actually experiencing flying rich people around the world?
Well, my role was, some instances I was responsible for the aircraft. So I had to make sure that some of the owners I worked for, that the maintenance was done, the aircraft was clean, so I'd arrange for the cleaners to come in and clean the aircraft on the outside. Very often I had to clean the aircraft on the inside, update all the navigational charts, make sure all the maintenance was done on schedule, and then make sure that everything was organized for the boss, his guests, his family, and stuff like that. Some of the people I flew around were millionaires, some were billionaires. I would have to greet them and go out to the terminal as they arrived. The other pilot would stay on the aircraft and then walk with them to the aircraft, load their bags on the plane. Off we'd go, we'd take off, and then during the cruise we'd go in the back and have a bit of a chat. Well, one of us stayed up front, just do a bit of PR with the passengers and that. And sometimes the boss used to send us out to pick his guests up and then bring them to him. Or other times we were delivering people different places, or sometimes packages, or just flying the boss around, or his priest. We used to fly his priest around as well. The priest had the aircraft available. Whenever he rang, we had to fly him wherever he wanted to go. So it's quite interesting. I worked for a number of individuals, met some interesting people. And interestingly enough, Arthur, a lot of the people I flew around are very, very rich people that you've never heard of. So that to me told me one thing, that the richest people in the world are not necessarily on the Forbes 100 list.
That's absolutely true. That is absolutely true. Now, Fab, you educate the masses about building wealth. From your own experience, can you explain to the listeners, what do billionaires and millionaires do on a consistent, regular basis that unfortunately broke entrepreneurs just don't do?
Well, I would say, and this is something I learned in the very early years. I came across a book which I'm sure you're familiar with, and maybe a lot of the listeners, is a book written by Napoleon Hill called Think and Grow Rich.
Powerful book.
Yeah, I must have read that book probably 20 times in my life, and I always make a point of rereading it again. I just reread it again a couple of months ago, and I always pick up something new. But the thing that resonated with me the most, and the thing I've seen in my own life, and in the life of these millionaires and billionaires, because obviously flying them around the world, and now I don't fly them as much as I did in the past, because most of my time now is selling them aircraft and managing the aircraft for them. But I do get to spend time with them either on the phone or on a conference call or in person. I always like to ask them how they started and what was the motivator behind them. And going back to Napoleon Hill, the common denominator between all these successful people is the fact that they had a burning desire to achieve whatever they wanted to achieve. They had a purpose. And this purpose was a large purpose. It's not like, well, I'd like to do that, but I don't have the money. No, they never asked themselves that question. When I graduated from, I went to this, after finishing international school when I was in Italy, I went to an Italian school for about 3 years. And it was an aviation college. And all the kids in this college, they all wanted to become pilots. And I remember in my class, there was 25 of us. And out of the 25, only 3 of us ended up becoming pilots. Now, I wasn't top of the class. I graduated number 7 in my class out of 25. Why was I successful and why weren't the others successful? Well, it's very simple. Once we finished and everybody tried to get into the Air Force and be sponsored by airlines, I think one guy managed to get in the Air Force, Italian Air Force. All the others didn't get in. Everybody said to themselves, well, I'd like to be a pilot, but it's very expensive to pay for the training. I don't have the money, so I'll have to go and do something else. Now, I didn't have the money. But I didn't ask myself, I didn't say to myself the same thing. I asked myself a different question. I asked myself, well, I don't have the money. How can I get the money? Now, the reason I asked myself that question, because I believe that I may have not been as academically as sound as the other guys, because I was number 7. I wasn't number 1. Okay. Interestingly, the other 2 guys that made it as pilots were behind me. They were number 8, number 9. So the 3 of us that made it were not in the top 6. But I believe that we had more motivation, more purpose, more burning desire within than the guys who were at the top. That's why we asked ourselves a different question, and we did whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. I mean, I taught English as a foreign language. I was fortunate enough, being English my mother tongue, and in Italy people needed to speak English, and the schools don't teach it very well. So I was out at a very young age teaching top executives of top companies and lawyers and air traffic controllers English, and I was charging a lot of money for it, and I was very good at it as well. And people were saying, oh, you're very young, why should I pay you this amount of money? I said, look, my students get results. So do you want to pay someone to get your results, or do you want to pay someone based on the experience? Because to me, experience is not important. What's important is that you pay and you do 20 hours of English lessons, that you go out there when you do business, you understand what people are saying to you, and you can explain yourself to them in English. That's what counts. I said, I will deliver, and if you don't believe me, here's a list of people that have had lessons with me or currently having lessons with me. You can phone them up and ask them if I deliver or not, and then get back to me. Some people would get back to me, some wouldn't, but I wasn't interested. I was driven because I needed the money to become a pilot. And at one stage, it was during the first Gulf War, I got offered a job with one of the top Italian TV stations to be in the newsroom with their news people to report on what was going on with the war in Iraq. And that job was quite well paid, and I turned it down, and the guy said to me, why are you turning down such an opportunity? He said, so many other young people would love this opportunity. I said, I couldn't care less. I said, it doesn't pay me as much as I make as an English teacher, because I was charging a lot and I was teaching privately and for some schools and whatever. And my goal is to become a pilot. I'm not interested in becoming a news anchor or something like that. Who cares? And he said to me, well, this is a great opportunity. I said, and then he turns around and says to me, you're a mercenary. I said, yes, I'm a mercenary. And I'm after whoever pays me the most, because I'm driven, I've got a purpose, I know what I want, and I'm focused. And I'm not going to be distracted by getting on TV or whatever. Who cares? I just need the money to go out and do my flight training. That's what I need to do. That's my next step. That's where I'm focused. So being focused is another important area. And that's why another reason why I think I succeeded is because I was focused. I was driven, and I was unstoppable.
So you was driven and you was focused. So without purpose, you have no focus?
You have to have purpose. I mean, if you are out, I mean, a lot of people like the idea of becoming a pilot because it's something a lot of kids dream about and whatever. It's not an easy profession. It's not easy to get through the training and whatever. But whatever you decide to do, whether you want to be a business person, a ballerina, a singer, a writer, an actor, you have to be driven because it's not going to be easy. That's why very few people succeed in these things. Because it's not easy. We've got the Olympics going on right now. You look at those guys that are winning these gold medals. Now, those athletes have trained solid for the last 4 years, every single one of those athletes. Now, what distinguishes the gold medalist from the guy that doesn't even qualify for the final? It's the purpose. You have to be fired up emotionally. It's the emotion. The word emotion contains the word motion, which means movement, action, okay? So there has to be something that's going to get you out of bed early in the morning and keep you going, even when it's tough, running those 20 miles in the morning and then working out in the gym in the afternoon. It's tough. It's painful. Why do they do it? Because they're driven, because they have purpose.
You are experiencing a life-changing, powerful interview, and you are hearing it first from Arthur Robinson Jr.'s PowerfulInterviews.com.
Can you explain to the listeners, as an airline pilot, how much money can an airline pilot make?
Well, I mean, an airline pilot, obviously, depending on where you work in the world, I mean, you can make anywhere between $1,200 a month all the way up to $20,000 a month. Depends who you work for, what airline you work for, your seniority, your experience. But what we have to look at, and this is having been in the industry now quite a long time, is what I noticed is when I started out, the first airline, I was making some good money. I wasn't flying that many hours. But what's happened over the last 20 years is the salaries have stayed exactly the same, but the hours that you fly have tripled. So if you take the money you were making 20 years ago, you may be making $10,000 a month back then, but $10,000 20 years ago is like $20,000 today. If you imagine making the $20,000 and only flying 30 hours a month, you have a great life. Now these guys are making this $10,000 a month, which is obviously not as much as what it was 20 years ago, but they're flying 90 to 100 hours a month. I mean, I was on the phone to a friend of mine earlier today, and he's flying for a charter airline, and he's flying 99 hours flying, day, night, day, for the next 4 months.
Wow.
And completely knackered. The guy is completely fatigued. And I'm sure that accident that happened in Dubai the other day with the Emirates 777 that crashed, I'm sure that one of the causes of that crash was the pilots were fatigued. And you see, the thing is, Arthur, when you're fatigued, it doesn't matter how experienced you are or how good you are. You may be the best pilot in the world, but even the best pilot in the world, the most experienced, will make mistakes when he or she is fatigued.
So basically, airline pilots can make up to $10,000 a month, so that's around $2,500 a week, but their income can increase if they stick with that profession.
Yeah, it can increase, but I mean, it's not as good as it used to be. There are quite a few people in the business jet world which are flying a lot less and making considerably more money. And I mean, there's a few buddies of mine that are making some very, very good money flying private jets, and they're not flying much. They're flying maybe 100, 150 hours a year, which is very good, and they're taking home $15,000, $20,000 a month. Now that's a good balance.
Okay. Wow. Fab, explain to the listeners, I have a two-part question for you. How can entrepreneurs and business owners build wealth with private jets? And what is the difference between the private jet that is called the Gulfstream G650 and the Airbus A380?
Okay, well, first of all, the Airbus 380 is an airliner, carries between 400 to 600 people, very heavy airplane, 4 engines, costs us a lot of money to operate. I don't personally like that aeroplane. I don't think that going to such a large aeroplane with 4 engines was the right thing to do. When Airbus announced it, I was against it from day one. I think we should be going supersonic or hypersonic. I think if you look at the history of aviation, we've always looked at going faster and faster, and then they retired Concorde for some strange reason, because that accident that happened with Concorde was not Concorde's fault. It just hit a piece of debris on the runway. So I think the future lies in going faster. The Gulfstream G650 is the top-of-the-line airplane produced by Gulfstream. It's quite a fast airplane. It's got 7,000-mile range, so it gets you across the Atlantic, or gets you from LA to London direct, which is great. Obviously, it's a private jet, so you get to charter it or to own it and fly just you and your own people, your own team. So you know everybody that's on that airplane. When you're flying on an Airbus 380, you're on the airplane with other 599 people, which you don't know. And so there can be plus and minuses about that, and you're obviously leaving based on the schedule the airline dictates. So if the airline says the plane's leaving at 10 o'clock in the morning and then there's a sudden delay, which you have no control over, you're going to get late to your destination and stuff like that. So that's really the main difference. And of course, the Airbus 380 being a lot larger than a Gulfstream G650. I mean, the private jets are smaller aircraft than the airliners. Which is a good thing because they can get into shorter runways. The Airbus 380 can only land at certain airports around the world. So if something were to go wrong, you're obviously limited as far as the runways you can land at.
Now, how much does it actually cost to fill up a private jet in terms of fuel?
Well, I'd say let's look at how much it costs to run one of these things. I mean, you're talking $12,000, $13,000 an hour, sometimes more. But, there's many types of different private jets. And when you're saying about how can you build wealth using a private jet,
right.
A lot of people think that private jet costs $50-60 million. Yes, it can cost you $50 to $60 million. But what I've been doing lately in talking to a lot of potential clients is educating the market to make them and show them that you can actually spend a lot less to acquire your first jet, and then you will use that jet to make yourself more money. Now, how does that exactly work? Let's give you a practical example here. Let's say you need an aircraft that's got maybe a 3,000 nautical mile capability, which gets you from LA to New York direct, gets you from New York over to London direct, that kind of range. Well, you can go out today and buy a Dassault Falcon 50, which is a French-made airplane, a pre-owned one that's maybe 15 years old. You can kit it out with new engines, give it a new interior in, update the avionics to make them more modern, give it a new paint job, all for less than $5 million. Now, it's a 3-engine airplane. Now, the airplane, of course, because the engines are not as modern as, for example, Gulfstream G650, they will burn a bit more fuel, but bear in mind, you've only paid $5 million for the airplane, not $60 million.
So basically, you can purchase a private jet for $900,000 to $5 million?
Yeah, you can. I mean, you can buy jets for $300,000 as well. You've got to be, when you go into the older jets, though, you've got to be very careful, and you have to seek advice. You always need a professional aircraft salesperson that's got a technical background, either a pilot or engineer, that will.
Do you recommend for successful entrepreneurs to purchase a used private jet or a brand new private jet?
No, I would say this. I mean, if you are going to be doing a high number of hours, and high number, I said like 500 hours plus a year, then it pays to buy a new one. Because of the warranties, which covers the maintenance, et cetera, so you're gonna want a newer plane. But if you're going to actually start off and go and buy a jet when maybe you usually wouldn't buy a jet, because let's take Grant Cardone, for example. He had no idea how many hours he was going to fly. But he went out and bought a jet in any case, because he said, now I've got the jet, I'm going to use it because I bought it, I own it, it depreciates every minute, I need to use it to make myself money. Now, how can you use a private jet to make yourself money? Now, a lot of people say, oh, I'll charter it out to somebody else. No, what you do, you've got the plane available, like you've got your smartphone available, your iPad. Now what you're going to do is you're going to go out there and you're going to contact people, and you can use the internet to do this, people that you could potentially do business with. And then what you're going to do is you're either going to fly out to see them, or you're going to send your jet out to pick them up and bring them to you. Now, I know a lot of people that do this, and if you send your helicopter or your jet out to pick a potential client up, to bring them to you, the odds of the deal going through is far lot higher than if you turn up in a car. Or with Delta Airlines.
Wow.
Okay? You make a whole different impression. And now, a lot of people, they get the wrong end of the story. They think you need millions and millions to buy a jet. But what I'm saying is, even if your radius of action, let's say, is just the western part of the United States, you can go out and buy yourself a jet for less than $1 million, which will get you around those cities that you need to go. The other thing which is interesting is, in America, for example, you've got about 300 to 400 airports which are serviced by the airlines, but you actually have 5,000 airports altogether. In Europe, we've got similar numbers. We've got about 4,000 airports and only about 300 serviced by the airlines. So what this tells you is that there are a lot more airports out there that if you have your own private aircraft, you can fly in and out of. Now, it may be that the meeting that you're going to is close to a small airport, but you have to fly into the large airport, drive 2 hours to get to your meeting. If you have a private jet, you can land at the small local airport, which is 5 minutes away, get out the plane, into a car right away, and drive straight to your meeting, and then straight back to the airplane. You physically drive up to the plane with the car, get out the car, and straight onto the airplane. And that saves stacks of time and gives you flexibility that flying with the airlines won't give you. Now, if you take that and you think of that flexibility and that time saving that you're going to have, I mean, that's a weapon.